Hey everybody, this is the Workplace Therapist Show, at home edition. So really excited to be with you all today for our kind of leadership lunch. And I'm really excited to not only have Whitney, my amazing producer, on the show, like she's been on the show the last few weeks, but my really good friend, David Papa. David, hey man, how are you doing?
Hey, Brandon, doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
So people who have listened to the show before would remember David, and you've been on, we've talked about goals before, we've talked about, and we had that nice lively discussion, goals or anti-goals, which people still talk about today. And so David, you're in Prague, Czechoslovakia, right? Or Czech Republic?
Yeah, Czech Republic. Yep, that's where I am.
Yeah. So I thought it was really cool because not only could we get the perspective of what you've been talking to people about, kind of not only meditation and mindfulness, but even coming out of this on the other side and how we can get our kind of thinking around that. But also love to get your perspective of what you're seeing in even your part of the world and how this is kind of impacting the folks around you and even the communities that you're in. So it's kind of nice to get that perspective. Plus, it's just good to catch up.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I guess I'll start by saying that I think Czech Republic handled it pretty well. As far as some of the places I've seen, we went on lockdown pretty early. We're already on week 5 or something of lockdown, and it was all an attempt to. We saw what was happening in Italy, I guess, and they decided to try to stop things before it got out of hand. And now things are starting to reopen already. They started to reduce some of the regulations, and we've been wearing masks for weeks outside. We've had to wear masks, but now if you're in the park alone doing some sports, you don't have to wear a mask. So that's good. And then the food stores have been open and pharmacies, but now electronic stores are open. Evidently, those are essential items for people like me. They are, for sure. So I'm glad about that. And so there's signs of life are returning. I think so. Everybody here is so many businesses have shut down. The government is trying to figure out how to help people, how to get, maybe they've postponed the tax payments. They've postponed health insurance and social security payments for a little while. So, I feel pretty lucky. I don't know, maybe it's a consequence of a small country, but things here went pretty smoothly, actually, and it's starting to already open up again. So we'll see if that continues.
I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. If you had to guess when kind of all the self-quarantine, shelter in place kind of stuff that's happening for you guys, when that's going to stop, is it the end of April? Is it the end of May? If you had to guess.
Well, the latest lockdown news is that it's going to go till end of April. They might change a couple regulations along the way, but basic setup is still going to go till end of April. So I think I would be really surprised if it went beyond mid-May. Maybe they'd extend it a couple more weeks if they haven't seen like a turnaround in cases or something. But I'd be really surprised if it went beyond mid-May. I mean, apparently in the warmer weather, it's much harder for the virus to survive. And so, the cases will continue to drop. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's like 2 more weeks for you guys.
Yeah. Well, end of April. Yeah, it's a couple weeks. So no, not bad. I'm looking forward to it. Believe me.
Yeah.
Getting a little stir crazy.
Whitney, how are you holding up?
Doing okay. Yeah.
Is that like a hysterical laughter?
Yeah, it's just
Probably.
A little bit of madness.
There have been a couple of moments where I have said something and laughed, like my web designer and the spider meme. But and then I follow that up with quarantine's really starting to get to me.
Yeah.
So.
I felt really different this week. I felt kind of I guess I've been going through all the stages of grief. I guess I don't know, but I'm kind of excited this week. And I don't know if anyone else is feeling that way, but I
felt that.
I've been excited about thinking about the restaurants I want to go to when they open up again. Like I'm working on my list, vacations, places I want to go visit. Like, I don't know when that's going to be, but and then even excited about kind of what new normal is going to look like after this. And that's something that, we can definitely talk about today. So I will, since I've been doing this kind of every week, kind of sharing the conversations I've been having with people. This was the first week where I had people that I was talking to, my clients, and just even folks I was connecting with, that wanted to start to talk about strategic planning, or in other words, it's more simply put, like, okay, how do we plan for coming out of this? What's the future going to look like? So, and I've been kind of angling them more towards scenario planning rather than strategic planning, because there's various different scenarios that could play out. But it's kind of exciting. My sense is people have kind of got a handle on how to make this work. Are you stretching your neck, Whitney? Is that what you were doing?
That is
That
one
was
thing.
extremely distracting.
Like Isaac and I have been walking
Very hard to
around.
concentrate on my thoughts when you're doing stretching.
Well, you're
things.
all I can see. So
We're gonna open it up for questions, and we're gonna get questions about Whitney's stretching routine.
No, she's
because there's only so many places in the house that you can sit, and it's like my back and my neck is, I feel like I'm Brandon's age.
rude.
Ouch.
Ouch is right. Jeez.
Ouch. She's making fun of your old neck.
My old neck. My old neck. That's great. I hope my kids don't hear this, because that has been their favorite activity this whole entire time, and they've been having a lot of fun with it, is let's really make fun of mom and dad. Like, let's really, really let them have it.
I'm glad to hear that, because when I watched the live shows when Abby was on, you made fun of her a lot. So you could tell Abby, like, she's taking it back. She's giving it back. I like it.
Oh yeah, they've been pretty relentless. So yeah. So, but I guess we like each other. It's okay. I will say laughter has been fun too. In my house, we've had a good time with that. So it's been really good. I am in desperate need of a haircut. So
just do your own, like I did.
Can't see David. David, I think he's got a really cool haircut. I mean, I think it's kind of really cool. Euro chic, man. I like it.
This is a home done quarantine haircut. It's I highly recommend it. It was fun to do. Came out in a way I didn't expect. I was like, it's a nice distraction / surprise during quarantine time. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll pivot into kind of one of our conversation topics, David. And I kind of left it open to you. I said, where do you have energy today? So let's kind of like do some conversations around kind of I won't want to spoil the surprise, but kind of what you've got planned for us. And then we'll leave it open to questions. And just like every one of these leadership lunches, our goal is to answer any questions that you all might have. Any comments that you've got, we'd love to hear them. Really just make this a nice conversation as we're all trying to connect in wherever we're sitting. So David, talk to us about kind of the stuff. I know you've been doing a lot of live shows in your end of the world. What's been some of the stuff that you've been talking about, and what do you have energy for today?
Yeah, well, the thing that I've been talking about on the shows, and also people that I'm coaching or people I'm talking to in general, it's really the question is, we're all feeling the strain of this new situation, the strain of this imposed situation. This is like our temporary normal. But the question is, when things start to open up again and we start going back to life without quarantine, do we want it to look like the way it looked before? Do we want it to go back to normal? And the things that excites me the most right now is when I'm talking to people and they don't want it to go back to the exact way it was. They realize that some of the things that they were doing, some of the ways they were spending their time, some of the ways they were spending their energy, some of their habits, some of their ways they were running their relationships, some of the ways they were approaching their work, they realized during this pause time, oh wow, I'm actually glad to get a pause from those things. I don't think I want to pick those things up again in exactly the same way when the things start going back to option to be normal. So the new normal is really what's on my mind. What do we really want to create in the new normal? Because I also kind of don't want it to go back to the exact way it was. There are some actually amazing things happening during this quarantine time. I mean, I don't know if you've been, well, I'll just leave it at there. We could talk about some of those things, but that's what's on my mind. That's where my energy is. What's the new normal going to be? More intentional than it was before.
Okay. All right, let's go around the horn. So David, how about you? What's your new normal? when you think about the things you've learned in this time that you want to kind of carry with you, what are maybe one or two of those things?
I think the 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 pace I set myself in my work was slowed during this time, and I found myself actually in some ways being much more effective. I was very often pushing myself, just going one task to another, just like speedily going through all my work. But in this pause time, I've tried to, tried to take a position of, okay, I want to be much more intentional with how I spend my energy, because, maybe the normal things I was working on before, they're not going to bring the same things because nobody's doing live in-person meetings right now. So I can't be talking to businesses about doing live trainings for them. You know, I can't be talking to some, people here about doing the coaching groups that I do in person. Right. So it's a reset. How do I want to really intentionally spend so I was doing a lot more checking in before I take action. During this quarantine time, before I take action and do something, I'm doing a lot more checking in. What feels right for me to do? What feels joyful for me to do right now? Where does my energy really seem to be flowing right now? What does my heart want me to do right now? These are some of my favorite questions. What feels light in my body, that where I can easily apply myself to right now. And when I do that, and I'm just going slower and checking in more with myself before I do something, I'm finding I'm much more effective. My writing is better. My coaching is better. These live shows I'm doing, I feel like we're giving a lot of great tools for people. So this is one thing I'm noticing for myself.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. I love that a lot. And I love this, the idea of asking yourself, how am I feeling in this? What brings me joy? Where's my heart in this? I think asking those questions and pausing to ask those questions. I know I was running at such a frantic pace before this. I wasn't incorporating that. So I'll share mine in a minute, but Whitney, we're going around the horn. You're up.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo David's words. There's this quote going around by Dave Hollis, and it's essentially, in the rush to go back to normal, take the downtime to decide what you want to rush back into. So it's been very much the same for me. There have been things where my attention has been forced other places, which has allowed me to pass things on to team members and let them take on a little bit more and handle more and run other things. So it has guided me toward delegation.
Nice. How's that been for you?
It's good.
There's the nervous laughter again.
Yeah.
She's about to do a neck stretch.
Yeah, hang on, let me get ready for this. Yeah. Probably anyone will tell you I am not the first person to delegate, but I should delegate more. And I've learned that during this time.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I can say for me, I would echo some sentiments around both of those, to be honest. I've definitely liked having more. The first couple of weeks of having extra downtime, I wasn't sure what to do with myself. I'm still not exactly sure what to do with myself. Things I'm missing that I haven't figured out. I've not figured out how to really work in a good workout routine yet for my life. I got to figure that out. I would like to do that this week. So try and figure out how to get that exercise back in, because I had my routine at the gym, and that's not, I've got to find a replacement for that. But what I have really enjoyed is I've enjoyed having more time to just connect with people. So now when someone reaches out to me and says, hey, can we grab 30 minutes to connect? I can. Before, I would say I really don't have the time in my work day. We'd have to find another time outside of work. And that was bleeding into my family time. And so I just really wasn't able to do it. I just didn't have the time. So I like the fact I've got the time. I noticed about myself that where most of my anxiety is anything I'm doing in person. So if I'm doing in-person team retreats or workshops or speaking engagements, while I really love doing those things and I get to bring a lot of good work to the world, it creates a lot more anxiety for me. And that's my own kind of stuff, and I know that, but I haven't had that. I haven't had all the anxiety because I'm not doing in-person stuff. So I'd like to figure out what to do with that. And it's also created more space, and it's forced more creativity and innovation. Like doing stuff like this. We didn't really have time to do this before. And why do this when we could go to the studio? But this has created some opportunities. And David and I are going to be collaborating on some projects which involve a lot more virtual leadership development for our clients, which is fantastic. We get to do some creative ways of bringing good stuff to the world in a way that people can take it right now. So it's got me really being creative and excited this week. Now, there's one thing I want to change going forward that I do not know how to change. I've really enjoyed all the playfulness I've had with my family. That has been so much fun. Like every night, we're doing something fun. We're playing games, or the kids are going out shooting baskets, or doing stuff that they really never did before. And because they have had such busy schedules, they've got activities every night and they're doing stuff all the time. And so there never really was any time to just be playful with each other and enjoy each other. I really want to work that in, but I'm not sure how to do that because I know once things start back again, they've got their activities and they're going to go back to those. So I haven't figured that one out, but that's one thing I'd like to figure out how to solve for. I don't know.
Yeah, the home relationships have, this is a huge opportunity to look at our home relationships and how we really want them to run. Have you asked your kids if they want to go back to all their activities that they had before?
I haven't asked them. That's a really good question. I have a feeling that they'll say yes. So, Abby, this is her senior year. So if anyone got a chance to watch the video where Abby and I kind of interviewed her on losing her senior year, she wasn't sad about losing anything of the senior year experience. Didn't care about prom, didn't care about graduation. What she cared the most about was losing her track season. So running, that is really important to her. So I know she'll want to keep that. Now she's going into college, but she'll want to keep that. And Noah, he's been doing virtual. He's on a couple different baseball teams. One of them was a rec team that stopped. But his other kind of travel baseball team, they've been doing virtual kind of training sessions at night. He's really missing that. So I know he's going to want to go back to that. And then Aaron is my youngest. He's like more of a performer, artist. And so he gets involved and he's got some virtual classes he's been doing around that. My guess is they're going to say they want to go back to all that stuff, but it's a really good question to ask. I shouldn't assume that. You're right, David.
Do you know that do you know if they feel the same way as you or not about wanting to keep some of that really fun family time as well?
My assumption is they do because we're just all having so much fun every night. And I will say, like Noah said, so his sister Abby is 18. So he's a freshman in high school. She's a senior. So they would go to school together. And he's made the comment several times. He said, Abby not at school is way more fun than Abby at school.
Yeah. Oh man.
So really just enjoyed, like they go out and they play horse and shoot baskets. And those two typically had the most kind of conflicts. Yesterday they were working out together and Noah was showing her weightlifting. He's more of a bigger guy and he's more of a kind of power guy and she's more of a fast runner. And so, they're trying to like cross train each other. And it's been really kind of fun to watch them do that. It was really fun.
I think it sounds like it's a perfect opportunity to have a family conversation about what do we want to now pick up? What do we want to make our new normal? What do we want to keep from this time that we found out we really liked?
I love that.
Who knows? I mean, I'm having that same conversation with my girlfriend because one of the things that we've been doing is readjusting our habits. And I think that's, in the goals versus not goals debate we had, that was kind of I still stand on it is that I much prefer forming really effective habits than trying to work from goals. And so this is the perfect time to re-examine the habits. And one of the things that this quarantine time has gotten us doing is every single morning, I'm going to the park and I'm doing my Qigong in the park. And it's something I had in my mind all the time that I wanted to do. I wanted to, get in a little bit of nature every day, even though I live in the middle of the city. But this time kind of just pushed me to do it. And I started doing it. And now I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to stop doing that because it feels so, it sets up my morning, the rest of my day so well. And my girlfriend is like, oh, maybe that's a habit I can pick up too. So we've gone to the park a few times together and wouldn't never even, cross our mind to do that. We each, normally when we get up, we each have our own morning routines. We're each doing our own things. So this re-examination of habits, the habits, not only the work habits, but the habits with the people we live with, I think this time is the perfect chance to test some things that we wouldn't normally have done otherwise, and figure out what do we want to take forward, because that these habits, some of these habits that we're forming now are actually so enriching. Why not keep them?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I love it. I know my dogs would agree with you. They're like, yes, like we're going for 2 or 3 walks a day.
Yeah.
So excited.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, we weren't moving enough, to be honest. We weren't moving enough, and we were too busy, and we weren't paying enough. We weren't thinking of enough moments of like, where can we have just relaxed, peaceful time together? Why do we always have to be doing something like watching something, or like, why does it have to be so active? What if we were just, quiet together? For us, that's an interesting question, and
Yeah.
so that doesn't have to be anybody else's question, but I'm just saying these new questions that are coming up with how we want to spend our time and our energy, I think are so important, because even more than our time, our energy is what we have in our life to experience what we want to experience. Our energy is what we have to put toward creating what we want to create. And I think one of the things that is getting clear to people, hopefully, is all the ways they were just leaking their energy, all the ways they were leaking their life energy into all these things that didn't really serve them. How can we, not leak again when we start anew? How can we make sure we're putting our energy into things that we do feel really enriching us? The first maybe week or two of quarantine, we were watching a lot more Netflix than normal, and but I'm glad we realized, like, this isn't, I mean, it's like, this is this really, we want to just do this the whole quarantine, like every night, do it this way? Like, no. So, just like you guys were playing more games, trying to find other ways, doing fun, I mean, we're both into meditations, and we're both into, doing like, sometimes doing little rituals. Like we spend a little extra time on the full moon to just see what it felt like to acknowledge, like, oh, this is the full moon. It's the peak of a cycle. What am I feeling right now? In the new moon, we were like, oh, this is the beginning of a cycle. This is the beginning of a new, basically a 28-day cycle. What do I want to bring in this 28 days? We have time to ask ourselves those questions. And I think that space is something that I would encourage everyone to experiment with, because you're going to find something you want to keep that you didn't have in your busy life. Drop the ways you were leaking, drop the ways we were leaking, and pick up ways that are just enriching.
I love that idea of leaking energy, and then
Yeah.
being intentional about what you want going forward. I realize now why Whitney's neck is so sore. She's just nodding with everything you're saying. Yes.
I'm a
She's
good
so agreeable.
listener.
Always good.
Yeah.
That's
It's listener's neck. It's called listener's neck.
Thank you. If that was not a term, it is one now.
listener's neck. That's
Using
good.
it.
Better than old man neck. Was that what you said? Old man neck?
I think I said, I feel like I'm your age. David is the one who beautifully rounded out that segment of the show with old man neck.
Yeah. Thank you.
Something like that.
Right. I'm not going to tell my kids that one. That one will never
I
go away.
hope you heard that,
They're probably
Abby.
watching.
Yep. That was gold.
Well, I love that. Well, let me just see. Do we have any comments on chat? Any kind of questions or comments?
Yeah, so one of the questions, kind of the themes that came across, is what is needed to do that? So what is needed to build a new normal? So a lot of people have kind of the first, very similar to David, through the first couple of weeks, they were like, oh yes, time for Netflix. And now we've kind of been here for a while. And so everyone's thinking, okay, what are some ways that I can improve life when we go back to outside of quarantine? So maybe what are some tips that you both would have on how to make that happen? Because part of where I personally think we got to where we are the surrounding pressures, right? Even if you say, okay, I'm going to block Thursdays to be an admin day, but somebody calls and says, hey, do you have time for a call? We say yes. Or, hey, can you come out to this meeting? We cave and say yes, even though that's supposed to be maybe our core day to get things done.
Yeah, I'll start, and then David, I'll let you chime in. I think if I think about kind of what David's already said, it's kind of like take an inventory right now of what's really working for you. What do you want to keep? I think that's the first step, is kind of creating that inventory. And then you've got to realize, we all have to realize, when we start to move back into whatever normal is starting to look like again, you have to treat it like a negotiation, because there's going to be some gravitational pull, which may have us pulling back into the way things were. And so you've got to be intentional to notice that, and then decide where you want to set boundaries. And I think that's going to be a real key and challenge. So if you decide Thursday is going to be your admin day or your rest day, or you're going to get up every day and you're going to connect with your significant other and go for a walk in the park, and you're not going to start your kind of work day until 9:30 or 10, you've just got to be really intentional. And so, if I channel like my good friend Randy Hain and others, they would say, if it's not on your calendar, it's not going to happen. So how can you then put it into your calendar and kind of block it and protect it? So I think that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. I know. So a little bit of a tangent, but this isn't my first kind of, I wouldn't call this a recession. I don't want to be so bold as to call it that, or so negative as to call it that. But this is not the first time that I've gone through with my practice through kind of an economic cycle like this. So back in 2008 and 2009, when a lot of my work was not there because people weren't looking to hire someone to help them with culture, I carved out every Monday morning to write a blog. So writing was my thing. Every Monday was my writing day. Every Monday morning, and I would have my schedule of what I was going to write, and I would write it and post it, and that was my rhythm and routine. So I think, this is a great time to start to build, as David said, build new habits, and then figure out ways to put them into your kind of life.
And that blog, sorry, Brent, didn't mean to interrupt you, but that blog has now become a great resource for you. I mean, anybody can go on the Workplace Therapist and see all kinds of great articles for handling all kinds of workplace situations. And I know people find your site and search these things and come to get your advice sometimes because of what they read on that blog. So, that's an example of, you were in a downtime, but there was another beautiful opportunity sitting right there. If we're willing to just ask ourselves, what feels good to put our energy toward? What feels good to put our energy toward?
Yeah. And carving out the time, and also finding ways to create during this. Yeah. And that's the other nice thing. We have space to create. So how do you want to use that?
I don't want to.
More thoughts from you. What do you think?
Well, if people are feeling that energy coming through them to create something, this is the perfect time to try and test out what that feels like to act on it, because we're all at home. But I don't want to add just more of that pressure that Whitney was talking about. I don't want to tell people you have to create something new. You have to start a new project during this time. Because actually the first thing that came to my mind when, how do we start to make the new normal? The first step for me is you got to get quiet with yourself and really look around at what have you been doing? That really embracing the pause, that inventory that we mentioned. I literally recommend people take an area of their life, like their relationship, maybe a particular relationship, or maybe their work. Write down all the ways. Just make a list of all the ways on the left side of a piece of paper on how you spend your time, all the different ways you spend your time. And on the right side of that piece of paper, put like a 1 to 10 scale at the top. And then for each one of those things you listed, just give it a 1 to 10 rating on how enlivening does this task feel? How is this? 1 is like a total energy drain. 10 is like a total energizer. It somehow energizes my life. Literally rate everything you're doing, because even if you can't stop certain things that are low number on your list, the awareness is the first step. Just awareness. How do I really feel about all these things? And when you do a rating exercise, I like these because you get to use your logical mind for something that's very subjective and in some ways, like esoteric or just like fluffy for a lot of people. But you're actually trying to give each thing a 1 to 10 rating on how good it feels to do it. So that's involving our feeling states, and it's involving our logical mind. We're getting our whole self involved in this list, and it brings clear awareness to what has been an energy drain for me, and what has been things that are actually really enlivening. And can I spend more of my energy doing those things? Can I find a way the things that are really low number on my list to maybe delegate them, or maybe just stop doing them, or maybe do a tweak to them to get them to a higher number of energy? So, that's the first step, is taking this inventory, getting the awareness of where really my energy has been going. And after that, I don't want people to rush too quickly to, okay, how do I fill, the time? How do I, create more and push more? And I think after you get the inventory of all the ways you were spending your energy, just see if you can be quiet with yourself for longer than you normally do, longer than you're initially comfortable with. It doesn't have to be a meditation, which we know now from 20 years of science on meditation is extremely beneficial, but it can be just sitting with a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper and a pen, and then 5-10 minutes and seeing if something comes up that you want to write about. It can just be sitting quietly, listening to some birds somewhere, or watching, looking some trees, watching some birds or squirrels, and just seeing if after 10-15 minutes of that, some new idea comes to your mind, because it will when we get quiet and we stop trying to like push and grab and create and strive all the time. We make space for our inner voice, our deeper wisdom to start to show up. So this is the perfect time for that kind of thing. And so take the inventory and get quiet, and there's no rush right now. Don't rush when there's no forced rush.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing that struck me as you were talking is, I was playing it through my head. Sometimes this is where it gets tricky. Sometimes I evaluate how I feel in an activity differently than how I feel when I look back on that event or activity.
Mm.
Right. So I may have in the moment, it may feel stressful or not something I noticed, but in retrospect, I have really fond memories of that thing, and so it's like, I want to create more of those memories. It's kind of like my back of the envelope litmus test is whether or not I think a movie is a good movie is the next day after I saw the movie, am I still thinking about that movie?
Mm.
That tells me it was a good movie, because it's still like on my mind. I'm still kind of working through it, thinking through it. It's still with me, versus a movie that you see that you just almost forgot you saw it.
What if you're thinking, what if the next day you're thinking, man, I hated that movie? Do you then realize like, oh wait, I'm still thinking about it. It must have been a good movie.
Yes, usually I don't do that, but that's fair. So maybe if I think about that and playing that concept out with your inventory, it's like, don't just do it one time. Do the inventory and then put it aside, and then look at it again a week later and ask yourself, would you still rate it the same way?
Well, this retrospect, I like that add on. And also I would say this retrospect question is a beautiful question that, it's to ask people. You can take it further, like go further in the future and use the retrospect question. Let me tell you what I mean. You could ask yourself, like, a year from now, this thing I'm about to do, a year from now, am I going to be proud of myself that I did it? Mm. And then and if the answer is yes, that can maybe get you to do some things that maybe are a bit, uncomfortable, but you realize, no, you know what? I'm going to be, there's a benefit of this that I'm going to be proud of. Or maybe you can go even further, like this is a cliche, but literally this question works. On my deathbed, at the end of my life, I'm looking back on this period of my life right now. Am I spending my energy in a way I'm going to look back and be like, I'm proud of what I did there. I'm proud of how I responded to that situation. I'm proud of what I did for myself. I'm proud of how I cared for myself. I'm proud of how I cared for others. I'm proud of what I let myself do back then in that time. So getting that future perspective, I think, is a great.
We had some really good questions come in though that I would love for both of you to tackle.
All right, all questions. I think we'll spend the remainder of our time on those. So
awesome.
Let's hit us with another one.
All right, really good. So Kirsten asked, and I really like this, and I'm super curious on your answer. Do you believe that clients and coworkers will accept the changes we make for our new normal that we'd like to have, or do you think that we'll have pushback from everyone else expecting things to return to the old normal?
Okay, so David, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure. I'll go first this time, and then you can follow it up with a brilliant post answer. So, this is a great question there are two things that this is making me think about. One of them is what Brandon said earlier about boundaries. We're going to have to decide these aspects that we want to exist in our new normal. Are we willing to commit to them enough? Are they strong enough for us that we're willing to have sometimes a slightly uncomfortable conversation about resetting a boundary? Because you're absolutely right. If someone has expected one thing from you, and then there's a sudden change, they might have a reaction. So let's make sure that the new normal things that we're bringing forward after this time that involve other people, let's make sure that we're committed to them enough. The things we choose, that we're committed to them enough that we're willing to have those conversations. My guess is that since everybody is in the same boat, that that those conversations are going to be much easier coming out of this than they possibly ever were before. And the other thing that this question is making me think of is, why don't you ask them, these other people that you think are going to be resistant? Maybe ask them the question of, hey, have you noticed anything from this time that you're kind of glad you stopped and you don't want to continue? Have you noticed some things that you've tried during this time that you would actually love to make sure continue to be a part of your life? Ask them, because that prompt might, if they haven't thought about it, might get them thinking about it, but then they'll be more receptive, theoretically, to having that conversation with you about the changes you want to make. So those are the first two things that come to my mind that can maybe help.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good. I want to go a little bit into the idea of boundaries. So in the spirit of boundaries, just to be clear, a boundary is not a negotiation. A boundary is a boundary. It's not like, here's my boundary. Now let's negotiate on how you're going to press over that boundary. No, a boundary is a boundary. So in some cases, you might not even need to have the conversation. You say, I'm sorry, I'm unavailable on Thursday, but here's some options for Friday. When we explain why we're unavailable on Thursday, we're inviting a negotiation. And so we want to be real careful that we don't do that. You're unavailable and then immediately pivot to other solutions. 20% the boundary, 80% alternate solutions.
Okay. I like that a lot.
That works in every case except one, your boss. So you can't say, sorry, boss, I'm unavailable for calls tomorrow. or I'm not coming into work. I've decided I'm working from home. I'm more productive. So in those cases, you might have to make more of a case, more of an argument. So I did have a lot of clients that said, the exciting thing about this is we were never allowed to work virtually. Let's prove to leadership that we can make this work. So then we're given that freedom. So you might have to make a little more of a case with your boss. But other than the boss, with clients, with coworkers, with others, a boundary is a boundary. So just be careful that you don't inadvertently set up a negotiation, because then you're inviting people to cross over your boundary.
It's a super great point. I love that point. And I also love this 80% idea of, when you're setting a boundary and then you spend 20% of the time setting the boundary, but then 80% of the time, what are other options? Yeah. I really, you can apply that to the boss conversation too, is what you made me think of. If you're talking to your boss about a new setup that, you would prefer, maybe you could say, I don't really want to do this anymore in exactly this way, because what I noticed is when I don't do that, other XYZ gets better and better and better. And I have option to do this and this and this. So use that 80% of what's positive from the change, in the boss conversation as well, I would say. Does that make sense? That makes sense what I just said.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the trickiest part for everybody, is the boss, because the boss may expect you to go back to the way things were. But just to David's point, the boss has also experienced life differently. And I'm sure she or he wants to keep some of that going forward. So there might be opportunities to have that conversation. That's when it's going to have to feel a little more like a negotiation, but with everybody else, nope, just lay your boundary out. And then it's really up to you to stick to it. Mm-hmm. That's the key. Your greatest adversary in this is the person looking back at you in the mirror.
All right, you ready for another question?
Yeah, hit us with another one.
This is from Jose, okay?
Okay.
Is there a litmus test, and this kind of piggybacks off of what we were just talking about. Is there a litmus test to find who you are? Awareness, so that you can start building that foundation now before we go back to work.
So say that one more time. Is
So
there a litmus test for?
to finding who you are. So building that awareness about yourself, which, can feed into how do I know what boundaries to set? Because obviously you have to know what's important to you to do that. Is there a litmus test to find who you are? Awareness. That way we can start building a foundation now before we go back into work.
Gosh, I could start with that, but I feel like David should start with it. That seems like right at the
There we
valley.
go. First again. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, thank you, Jose, for this question. I am a huge advocate. My whole life has been changed. And I'd like to think that the people I work with, the people I coach, they have gotten great insights from what I'm about to say. And that is, I'm a huge advocate in somatic intelligence. This is the intelligence that comes from our bodies. So when we experience joy, when we experience happiness, when we experience aliveness, it's not, we can't point to a spot in our brain, like, oh, I'm feeling joy right now, like ding, 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 ding. It doesn't happen like that. It's a full body experience. When we're doing something that feels really good, maybe we feel an expansion, we feel it in our chest, or we just feel warm, or we feel just some energy coming through us. So we need to tap into the wisdom of the body. In my view, we need to tap into the wisdom of the body to figure out, answer these questions of what is a real match for me? What is my authentic self? How to be more aware of that is to, the inventory list that we talked about when you're giving those ratings, this idea, what does it bring me joy? Does it feel alive to me? Does it feel light to me? Does it feel exciting to me? Those are all body sensations. So I would love during this time where everybody's at home for people to actually get a lot more sensitive and clear about the information their body is giving them, because your body will show you if you're about to do something that doesn't feel good, you'll feel it constrained. You'll feel a heaviness. You'll feel like maybe like an uncomfortable heat. You'll feel like you'll feel like a closedness. You'll feel tighter. Versus things that are really a match for you that feel really good. They'll feel more open. They'll feel more light. They'll feel energizing. They'll feel expansive. These kind of feelings. So all the time we're getting these signals, and these signals, where they come from, that's a whole huge topic, but just, the thoughts in our conscious mind are only a tiny percent of the thinking that's actually going on in our bodies. Our subconscious is processing so much more information than shows up in our conscious mind. And part of the language of that information comes through body sensations and emotions. So we want to use that information. Those are data. Those body sensations and emotions that we have, those are data that can show us what is feeling good and authentic to us and what isn't. So that would be my first take and what I think Jose is asking.
I love that. So I'm gonna build on it and take that as kind of like the huge everything David said. Amen, brother. I mean, it's beautiful. So I'm gonna add a few more pieces to kind of round out the edges to it. So first, why this matters is because the way you feel and the way you show up is going to be contagious on those around you. Your family, your friends, your coworkers. So if you're feeling full of life, feeling energized, feeling inspired, then the people around you are going to feel full of life, energized, inspired. If you're feeling stressed out, anxious, edgy, then that's what you're going to be bringing to the world. So it has a lot to do with not just you, but what you're bringing to others and the relationships in your life. So that's why it matters. Now, what David just gave everybody was a master class on how to do this. Okay? And that's fantastic. I'm going to kind of give you kind of a walking up to the master class. So for people that maybe have a hard time putting emotional words and language around how they're feeling, David's suggesting get to a place where ultimately you can do that after every event and experience. You can tap into how you're feeling in your body and what's going on, and you can use that as data. Okay. The starting place would be just at the end of every day, ask yourself, what kind of feeling word would I put around the day? Did I feel energized today? Did I feel a little flat today? Did I feel anxious today? What word would you put around it? So start at kind of the high level, just start using the language of feelings and words around the day, and then ultimately get to the point where you can be able to then do it after an event. But I think it starts with kind of looking at it at the end of a day, and then working your way back to eventually be able to do what David said. And then that then starts to give you good data around, yeah, this is how I want to show up. This is what I want my life to be like. And then you can then start to map activities to kind of tie to that. That's my 2 cents.
That's great. I love that day reflection from a perspective of, trying to tie an emotional word to it, trying to make a feeling state attached to it. I really like that. I think, thanks for pointing out, maybe what's the simplest way someone can get started on this, this question you raised for me. And I think one of the things, if someone wants to get more sensitive about their somatic intelligence, what's going on in their heart, in their gut, what's going on in their body sensations, one of the best places to start is with things that don't matter. So, like things that don't have any stakes associated with them, because it can be quite intimidating to try to make a decision about something we're going to do at work with body sensations if you're not used to, you're not used to that thing. So start with things that don't even matter, like, for example, okay, I'm about to, have an hour or two with my family, and we're talking about watching a movie. What does that feel like in my body? Like, you don't have to just jump into it. Watching the movie, what does it feel like in my body? Does that feel like an expansive, open, like activity that feels exciting to embrace? Or does that actually feel a little bit constrained? Does that actually feel like I feel a little bit uncomfortable somehow, in my body about this? And then if you are feeling uncomfortable, this is great practice to say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit of tension around this movie, or I'm feeling a little bit of an energy drain around this movie. What feels exciting to me right now is, what if we played this board game? Things that don't matter, that don't have stakes, but you can start to use the language and start to see what your body tells you, because you're getting these signals all the time. You can start to practice with those very simple, small things. Then it becomes easier to involve that data with the bigger decisions, and so I appreciate you, bringing that up, Brandon, that there's baby steps here that we can take.
Yeah. Cool. Whitney, do we have another question?
We do. So Maureen wants to know, what would you say to those that they don't have that downtime right now? They've actually had more pressure put on top of them. So, like, especially if you're in, obviously, the healthcare industry, right? They're running midnight to midnight. Cybersecurity is another industry that's been hit really hard. What would you say to those that they really maybe they're working from home, but they haven't quite had that downtime, but the pressure on them has increased?
Yeah, so I'll start and then I'll hand it over to David. So this is the downside of working remotely and working from home. And David and I both have clients that are 100% virtual. And in every single case, when people have that as a lifestyle, they end up working more hours than they would have worked if they went into the office. And it's particularly true if they don't have other elements in their life that would require attention. So I was talking to someone yesterday, I can't remember what the conversation was, but they said, the people I worry about the most on the team are the folks that are, single, living in an apartment, because they'll just get up in the morning, fire up their laptop, stay on it all the way, and then until they go to bed at night, because they maybe don't have a significant other or other things in their life that they want to dedicate time to. So I think it goes back to our conversation. I'll start with boundaries and say, I think that's one, is just really set kind of the boundaries in terms of your time and what feels right for you that you can do in a sustainable way to avoid burnout. So I think that's part of it, is just set those boundaries and really carve out the time that you want to dedicate to, whether it's rest for yourself or just eating a meal and without working while doing it. Just finding that those windows, I think, is important to avoid kind of the working nonstop piece. So even if there is more demands on you, we all still need time to recharge and renew. It's not sustainable to work 80, 90 hour weeks. So that would be my first kind of high level, and then I'll let David add some other points to it.
Yeah. Well, when I think about healthcare people, I mean, they're in a crunch right now. You know, there's a in England, and every like once a week they at a certain time everybody like goes out their windows and claps. For the healthcare people in France. At 8 p.m. every day in Paris, they clap for the healthcare people who are doing such intense work right now. So we all really appreciate that. I guess what I would say for people who are in an even more intense situation right now because of not having that pause. This isn't your pause time. This is like this is kind of your I need to devote I need to do self-care. I need to do whatever self-care I need to do to get through this time. And so I can just manage it and not sort of be just chopped down by this time. Just focusing on your self-care, and you can worry about reevaluating all the reevaluating stuff that we've been talking about. You can worry about that when this starts to calm down for you. Your reevaluation time is going to come. It's going to come because we're going to be emerged from this time, and the new normal is going to start to get shaped. And when the emergency stops, like for healthcare workers, for cybersecurity people, when the emergency starts to get a little bit looser for you guys, take some time for yourself. You might have to do it on purpose, but you deserve it. Take some time for yourself so if you can get that space, you can get that pause to reevaluate, you can get that silence with yourself to rejuvenate and recharge. Unfortunately, right now, I don't know how much of that reflection you're going to be able to do. It's more like make sure you're at least doing your minimum self-care so you can make it through the intensity, and then take the purposeful rest a little bit afterward. That's what's coming up for me in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's great, David. And the only thing I would add is something a client told me years ago. She said, I'm convinced anybody can do anything if they know when it's going to end. So I think that would be another thing to add to it, to set out some point in time that you're going to kind of work towards, like, June 1st, May 13th, whatever it is, pick some date. Maybe you set a vacation time, or you get approval to have a day off, or whatever it happens to be, but stick out that. So rather than just running until you drop, you're running the marathon, and at 26.2, you're done. So that's another way to kind of give us a little more of a sense of kind of that extra bit of energy, because we know it's going to end at some point. And if we're not really sure, set that for yourself. Figure that time out where you can rest. And I think David's point around that minimum self-care is really, really important. While we all honor the people who are doing so much to care for our folks who are sick and the folks who are on the front lines, particularly healthcare, I want to be really careful that that is a intentional sacrifice that they're making so we can all be better. And that's really, really powerful. That should not be confused with being a martyr. Martyr is one of the worst labels anyone can get. Martyrs are dangerous, and they don't take care of themselves, and they create a lot more pain and stress for everybody else. Don't be a martyr. So the self-care piece is really important. So you're caring for yourself, and be able to ask for help. And I know that's hard for a lot of us, but that's important in this time. So I think I would add that piece in. So Whitney, do we want to take one more, or do we want to call it success for the day?
I feel like that is success. I feel better. I feel much better. I was already thinking, like, in my mind, I need to do that, and I need to do that.
Success?
High five.
Hold on, before we completely call it success, I'm not going to share with everybody what I've decided on, but so a couple things. If you haven't watched my interview with my daughter Abby around her senior year, you should totally check that out. I learned a lot through that, and it was a different kind of perspective, not the only perspective, but a perspective of a high school senior. Another video that I did on this past Monday that I'll be doing every Monday is I rolled my positivity dice. And so I've got my I had my kind of orders for the week. And so I'm going to share with everyone more about how that played out on the next video, which will drop on Monday. And then I'll roll the dice again and see what I've got in store for next week. What I can tell you is the way I decided to take my particular order was angle it more towards my family. So I'll share with you kind of what I learned in trying to apply it with my family, folks in my relationships at home. So be on the lookout for that. David, any closing thoughts from you today?
Well, I just want to say thanks to everybody who tuned in and asked those questions. It's great that even though we're in this time of separation, we can still sort of, have lunch together, basically, and have this great conversation together. So thanks so much, Brandon, for having me on. Thank you, Whitney, for your amazing producing. And I really appreciate all the work you're doing. And I'm glad I had a chance to share, some things that maybe can help people in this time. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. So let's reach out and make sure we're all supporting each other.
Love that. Whitney, any closing thoughts from you?
Shout out to Isaac, you should, you're producing, you're not, no, that does not count.
He's a hand.
That
Isaac is a
count.
hand.
Shout out to Isaac, my better half, that's also producing. So
Thank you,
I just
Isaac.
monitor Facebook questions, really. He's the one with all the hookups.
I don't think Isaac is pretty awesome, and so are you, Whitney. So thank you for the gift that both of you bring to me and to everybody kind of watching. Well, all right, everybody. I think that's our leadership lunch for today. In David's case, it was actually dinner. He walked away from his dinner for this today.
I can't wait. It's going to be so tasty. It's going to be so good.
That's his progress. How many hours ahead are you? 6? Is it 6?
I'm 6 hours ahead of you. Yep.
I know it depends upon the time change, right? Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 6.
Yeah, because you change your clocks usually before we change our clocks. But right now it's a good 6. So it was perfect. Your lunch, my dinner worked out.
Worked out. Well, thanks, everybody. Until our next show, have a really, really great week and an awesome life. Bye.